Yeah, good evening to all the students who are present here. Today we have a special guest speaker, Suhrit, who is community manager in IKP Knowledge Park at Bangalore. And he has very good experience in terms of more of a managerial role rather than, in startups. So he's been with part of many startups in more of a managerial role. Managing IKP Knowledge Park, which is one of the very interesting space to look out for if you are planning to take your venture further. So thank you, Suhrut, for taking your time and joining us today for the class. So to set the stage, I would tell what our students have learned till now. So this is our 13th week of class or 12th week of class where every week they'll have a guest speaker like you almost every week or every alternate week where they'll be discussing about their experience in venture or some particular topic like IPR, or it can be okay, yeah, or it can be someone who has experience, like we had Nivedan Nimpe who spoke about his rural experience and things like that. So what we have learned over the classes, it's almost that we have covered MIT's disciplined entrepreneurship steps. So all the 24 steps where we have discussed about starting from how do you market, how do you do innovation, more of design thinking, how do you do uh, market segmentation, then how do you identify persona, beachhead market, and how do you expand your business, how do you make money, and so on and so forth. And more importantly, they've come up with a canvas as well that which covers all the steps, and each of the student are part of one or the other team. So we have students from 5 different departments. So starting from medical electronics engineering, then we have electronics and instrumentation engineering, electronics and communication, electronics and telecommunication, and another branch is electrical engineering. So we have 5, all of them are electronics and electrical related. And each student, along with their team, the team of around 4 to 5 of them in each team, they've come up with their own innovation or idea, which they have worked over this 12 to 13 weeks and have designed the entire thing. So sometime when they finish this course, which will be in January, they will come up with their own more kind of investor pitch where they'll present to investors. So, I mean, thank you for agreeing to be one of the examiner. Also, I have invited you. But like you, there are many such examiners who will be discussing about, who will be actually evaluating all their pitches. So it will be more like a venture capitalist discussion. So they'll have 7 minutes of time and then Q&A, and then they will also ask saying I need so much of rupees for business development and things like that. So that's the whole point of this course. This is the first of its kind which we are offering in BMS College of Engineering to these brilliant minds of students. So this is what is about this course. So yeah, over to you. And students, he has really good experience. I guess you should be asking questions. So if you need, you just raise your hand and you can ask the question. And yeah, one sec. Yeah, if you need, you can ask the questions, or you can also put it on the chat window. Raise your hand, I'll unmute you. Yeah. So Hrit, over to you, and we can start off the discussions. And this will be more of informal environment, what I wanted for students. So thank you, Suhrit, for agreeing for that. Over to you. Thank you.
Not a problem at all, Dr. Abhishek. So it's a pleasure getting associated with you once more with different kinds of initiatives. To start off with, guys, I'll just give you a little bit of a background of my own. So I myself am a mechanical engineer. I graduated recently in 2017, and post-graduation, I always wanted to explore a lot of other things apart from the regular paths, right? So I have had my internships in different industries. I've worked with Toyota for one of their internship programs. I've worked with various institutes like IIT Guwahati. I was one of the South India representatives for multiple programs of theirs. So after going through all of this, I understood that my skill sets lie more in the segment of helping other businesses or other people start up something of their own. So with this, I joined the Startups Club where I headed the e-residency support team for the government of Estonia. So Estonia, as you might, a few of you might know, is a very small country in Europe. It's one of the European Union nations as well. So I worked with their government for about 18 months to set up their e-residency initiative here in India. I was lucky enough to travel across India, talk to about thousands of entrepreneurs in a year's time. I have held conferences across India, helped small scale businesses as well as startups to set up bases in Estonia, sitting right here in India. So the essence of digital technology, what we are now seeing here in India, right? So for example, post the COVID era, we can see a lot of people coming online, making use of platforms such as Zoom or maybe other platforms like Google Meet. So they're trying to now communicate over online methods. But there have been other initiatives like the government of Estonia's initiative where people have been doing business online. So it's no longer required for you to, do business in one particular company just because country just because you're sitting in that particular country, right? So just because you're here in India, it does not mean that your business is restricted to the Indian market or maybe somebody for India, it is still even a bigger market. But for people like say Germany, so Germany, even though the market is good enough for them in the EU, but if you consider Germany as a single country, the market is slow for them. So that is where the government of Estonia came ahead and they said, let's open our digital borders to anybody who wants to do business across the European Union. So that was a good initiative that I worked with, and we've seen great results. India is as of now on the 8th position across the globe where people are registering for e-residency and making use of their services to get the businesses up and running in the European Union. And post that, I have handled partnerships for Startups Club, where I work with almost most of the incubation centers across India. This was for about 6 months of time. I work with everybody. You name it, VWorks, CoWorks, 91 Springboards, you name any co-working space or the incubation partners like NCRCL, IMB, AIC, JIT, AIC, Dayanand Sagar, that is here in Bangalore. So I've worked with most of these institutes, I've traveled across with them and ensure that we're able to give the startups a good base to start with. So when we say a good base to start with, there are different things that we'll be talking about as to what you should be covering when you're starting up. I'm sure your program has covered that particular bits. I would be answering most of the questions if you have any questions today. So that's about that. And I recently joined IKP Knowledge Park for the community managing here in the Jalhalli Center. I currently sit out of the Jalhalli metro station. This is a great facility over here where we are very much particular about building prototypes. So when Dr. Abhishek was telling me that most of you are from electrical background, so electronics and communication, medical electronics, triple E and electronics and telecommunication. So I'm very sure that you guys would be building something hardware, right? So maybe a few of you are still going to build something software where you will be using a lot of software technologies where you might be coming up with e-commerce platforms or you might be becoming aggregators. But apart from that, there might be a few of you who might be developing drones. There might be a few of you who would be building agri-tech solutions for villages, or maybe you want to improve rural India where there's a lot of potential to do so. So depending on these things, that is exactly where we at KTech Innovation Hub IKP come in place. We have state-of-the-art facilities available here with a metal workshop and wood workshop, where you guys can come make use of any of these equipments and ensure that you build world-class products. So when you're building these products, from our end, we ensure that whatever you build it faster and you build it in a manner in which you are able to compete with the world. Because see, if we have to bring the concept of Make in India into reality, or if we say, hey guys, we're going to reach a 5 trillion economy very soon. So to make this realistic, and the other point is, if you say I'm going to compete with China because now we have the opportunity to compete with China, right? So when you're doing such things, there should be there should be a support system across the country where you can actually get the state-of-the-art machines, and not every startup can go investing on the particular segment of instruments or machines that they want, right? So it does not be feasible from a startup's financials point of view. So that is where the government of Karnataka came up with this great solution called the common instrumentation facilities. Currently, we have 5 instrumentation facilities across Karnataka. Here in Bangalore, the other 4 would be in Shimoga, Mangalore, Belgaum, and Mangalore. So you can make use of these facilities across Karnataka to build your own startup ideas or prototypes. And we have people who can help you out with these as well. And to start with today's conversation, so I'm sure you know how to get your ideas into a startup, and then how do you get your consumers. So this is the key aspect as to what I want to cover today. So broadly speaking, we'll be putting it into three terms. One is how do you identify your idea? I'm sure you've covered that bit. We'll be stressing the importance of identifying the idea or the problem. And then moving on, we will be discussing how we are going to convert your idea into a prototype and how important it is to make your prototype as soon as possible, because that is where the competition is based out of. And post that, we will be discussing how do you get your first paid client, right? So getting the first paid client is all that matters for a startup. And post that, it is mostly duplicacy or replicating the process that you followed from step one to ensure that you're able to make money out of it, right? So that is how you make your startup into getting evaluated from angels, pre-series A, and then going into series A rounds, and then further on from there. So these are the few things that you'll be covering. I will just put it in the chat box for you guys to know what is it that we'll be covering today. Idea to prototype and prototype to market. So this is what we will be covering today. And until now, have I been pretty fast, or is the pace okay? Are you guys able to catch me, or would you like me to slow down or go a little bit faster? Abhishek, what do you think? Would you like me to slow down or go a little faster? Is the pace okay?
Yeah, pace is okay. Maybe a little slower should be good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So the first one is we will be talking about problem identification. So most of the times when we talk about startups or how these startups come into being, right? So people think I will sit in one place and think about something that is very unique and I'll get an idea, right? So we have seen all these images where we see that light bulb with the exclamation mark saying that, hey, I got an idea and I made it into a startup, right? So guys, let me clear one fantasy for you that happened only for Newton. So only he was able to work something out when an apple fell on his head, and something he was, he was bright enough to make something out of it. But in the real world, it is not exactly how it works. Yes, sometimes yes, but exactly that is not how it works. So how do you identify a good idea, or as we call it, how do you identify a good problem? So what you need to do, especially in the Indian market, if you're doing a startup for the Indian market, what you need to do is you have to identify that one particular problem that is bothering a lot of people. Say, for example, if I take the example of Flipkart, Amazon also did the same thing, but let me restrict my speech to Flipkart because Flipkart is an Indian company. So Flipkart, what did they do? They identified the pain point that people did not have the time to go out and purchase things, right? Especially e-commerce. So what they did is, okay, now let's come up with an app where people can order from their home. So what was the point that they captured here? The inability of the people to go out and purchase or go out, choose the, maybe they want to choose dress, or they wanted to get maybe shoes or something which they wanted to try it out and get it, but they were not having that particular time, or maybe they were just lazy to go out, right? So they identified this particular pain point and then they made a business out of it. So that is where identifying the problem comes into place. It's not an idea. The Flipkart founders did not say, okay, I think if I do an e-commerce platform, it's going to be a good idea. No, they went the other way around, where they did a market study and they identified the problem initially. Another example would be Swiggy. So what is Swiggy doing? So Swiggy is again doing the same thing. Again, it's an aggregator platform where it said, okay, there are lots of restaurants and there are a good amount of people who consume food on a regular basis. But then what was lacking before Swiggy was people did not know which place to order from, or which place was ordering from or offering what, right? So the menu was absent. That is where both Zomato and Swiggy came in, where they put the complete menu online, and now people had the freedom to choose from. And not only the freedom to choose from the different types of products that were there available, Zomato went one step ahead and also gave the pricing of these particular food items, right? So that is where it became a large hit, because a lot of us think, right, like before ordering, like if we go out for a restaurant or takeaways, a lot of us tend to look at the price and then select the item. But in most cases, but this might be a little embarrassing for people who would at this place or at the hotel that they go into, right? So maybe you don't want to look into you're with a group of friends and you would not want to look at the price of that particular food when you're with your friends. But what did Zomato do? Zomato made sure with their gold offering, they ensured that you were already looking at the prices even before you went to the hotel, so that you were able to choose from the restaurant that you would want to go, looking at the prices on an app. This was very discreet and a very large hit. This was the problem solution that they came up with. So identifying the right problem plays a very important role when you're developing a startup in the initial phases. And let's keep this as an interactive session. If you guys have any questions, I will be going to be covering 10 such particular points throughout the session. So if you have any questions as of now regarding problem identification, or how do you get to know what the problem is, or something regarding to this, so you can pop out and ask me the questions here. I will wait for about 30 seconds to 1 minute for any questions to come in. Let me know if you have any questions, please. Okay. So if questions don't come in, I am either too boring or you guys have been understanding everything bit to bit. I don't know which one of it is, because you guys are not yet responding. There are about 234 people here, and I expect at least a couple of questions to come in from you guys. So anything regarding problem identification, how much of a small it is or how much of a large it is, don't worry. Put in a question and we'll take it and see how best we can help you out with. Any questions, guys? Okay, awesome. So I think points have been cleared nicely in your course, and you, sorry?
One thing is our students are very responsive with respect to yes and no answers. Okay. So if you can ask, then they'll type lot of yes till you say stop. So that's the way the class has been working, and we used to have polls in different places also. So okay. Yeah, you can just ask yes and no things. They'll be super active and they'll answer.
Understandable. Got it. So you'd like to have a yes and no sessions from here onwards. We can do that. So let us identify a few pain points, which will be usually the initial starters to start with, right? For startups, like pain points that you might have, right? So one pain point that usually startups is the lack of the correct team, or the lack of money, or the lack of the technical know-how. So if you, what do you think out of these three things is the basic pain point for your startup? So you can just type A, B, or C. So the first option being lack of funds. If you think you're only like one thing that is stopping you from creating your startup, right? So if you just have to tell me one thing, I'm sure there are a lot of things, but if you have to tell me one particular thing, is it going to be lack of fund, or B, lack of a good team? Maybe you don't have people to do a startup with you, because usually when you say a startup, right, we at least expect one founder and a co-founder. So at least two people are required to initially start out with, to have a comfortable padding there. So maybe a lack of team is something that you might be facing, or C, you might be facing lack of the technical know-how. So when I say technical know-how, for example, you guys are electronic students, you identify, there's a question, I'll come to it. So you say, I am an electronic student, but I want to do something in the e-commerce bit of it, right? So when you're an electronic student and you want to do something e-commerce, the main problem would be you would not know coding, right? So that might be a technical know-how problem. So like this, there might be many other problems. Say, for example, you're an electronic student and now you want to find out the RPM of that particular wheel to know how or which material for the wheel to use. So for this, you should know about the strength of materials, the quality of the materials to use. So usually, which is dealt by a mechanical engineering student or a mechanical engineering graduate. So this might be a problem. So such thing. So I'll give you three options, as I said: lack of funds, lack of team, or lack of technical skills. So now you can tell me, which do you think is for your particular startup a problem? A, B, or C? I'll take the majority of the things and we can proceed with the discussion. I am seeing a lot of A and C's. Okay. I have to say problem identified will be successful. Is it only at the end of the journey? Okay. Shesh Salam's question, I'll take that. How to say Somebody has all three problems to begin with. Okay, no problem. We can split it into different things, A and C, A and C. Okay. So guys, I see that most of you have given me A and C. That is lack of funds and lack of the technical know-how, right? So, and of course, I see some of you answering all A, B, and C, all three problems. So I'll just cover a little bit about what to do when all three of them are a problem, right? Or even when there are two problems. So what do you do when there are a lot of problems to start with? Say, for example, these three are not just the problems, right? Along with these three, let me add a few other problems. You want a space to start out with, you don't have a space to start your startup, because if you're building something, right? Unlike the software guys where you give them a laptop and they can start building something, we being in the hardware segment, we cannot start something up until we have a good space, right? Maybe you want a 10x2 room at least to start with, right? So when this is again a problem, maybe you don't have the right amount of space, or maybe you don't have the people around you who can help you. Apart from the team, mentors. Maybe you don't have good mentors to start with who have the right kind of experience. So these might be these might be a few things that you want to consider. So when there are too many problems, what do you do? Right? So when there's been too many problems, what you need to do is break them down, looking at the priority of these problems. So try to see which is the most hitting problem. So rank them like how you rank your movies, right? Like give them in 1 to 5, give them rankings differently and see which you can start solving from the bottom. It is very important to start solving from the bottom, because as and when you start solving the problems, right, like it gives you an adrenaline rush saying that, okay, now I've solved this particular problem, let me move on to the next. Right? So that is how we also concentrate on games. Like for example, if people are here who used to play PUBG and now you play Call of Duty, you play these games again and again because you get that adrenaline rush when you get your kills, right? So these adrenaline rush in entrepreneurship is achieved when you're able to solve problems. Let me tell you, the adrenaline rush does not come when you're making money. No, guys, as entrepreneurs, you'll understand that money comes and money goes. But the adrenaline rush that you get as an entrepreneur is when you solve problems. So you have to ensure that you make a list of all these problems, take a couple of days, keep your peace of mind, and ensure that you list out all these problems and start tackling them one by one. Right? That way you will be able to solve all the problems, but you go in a step-by-step manner, following discipline, as your course says, disciplined entrepreneurship, following the method, selling, like going from the bottom to top approach is very important while solving problems. And coming to the most popular problems that I've got here, that is lack of funds and lack of the technical know-how. To start with, let's get into lack of technical knowledge firstly, and then we'll move on to lack of the funds. So first thing, if you say, hey, I don't have the right amount of technical knowledge to start something, right? So what we can do is, there are two ways in which you can categorize or go about doing this, right? So the first one is, look at your timeline of the startup, right? Say for example, maybe you guys are, which year of college are you guys in? This helps me understand a little bit. So can you just type the year or the semester of college that you guys are in? Third year? Awesome. So if you're third year of college, anywhere between second year to third year of college, you have the time or the bandwidth to learn the technical know-how, right? You're still young enough to learn the technical know-how by yourself. Maybe take some courses online, offline, reach out to the people who can help you build this particular technical stuff for you guys, because you guys are still young enough, you have the time to learn these skills. At least if not I'm not saying you have to be a pro in these particular skills, but if it is a key skill required for your startup. For example, if you're building an e-commerce website, knowing the basics of how to code an e-commerce platform to do dynamic changes is the basic. So that much you have to learn by yourself because you're in your third years, right? But say you were somebody who's already out of college, you're already 2 years, 3 years down the college lane, you have been employed and now starting up. I would say try to identify the right people who can help you out. Maybe you have a friend who is good at that, right? See how you can get him into your startup. It is not always necessary that they work for you always, but as a founder, you break down the work time for them. Say, for example, I'll take a very small example of getting a website built. Right, so building a website is the smallest thing of that. Every business, of course, needs a website these days because the first thing people do when they want to know about a business or a startup is they want to check their website, right? So when you want a website being built and you don't have the website building skill sets for you, right? What you need to do is make the website into different parts. Say, for example, you have a 10-page website to be built, or let's just say for 5 pages to make it easier for us, you have a 5-page website to be built. So you don't go to an expert and say, hey, I have a 5-page website. Can you just build it for me and give it to me? What you're doing, if you do that, what you're doing is you're trying to just reduce your work and trying to be lazy, right? Because you don't know anything about the website firstly, so you just want to take his technical help. That will not help you go a long way. Instead, what you can do is break that down into different parts. If you have a 5-page website, ensure tell him in the first instance itself that it is a 5-page website and what is the timeline that you have for him to build that particular website, and then ask him how many pages he can do it for you at a time, right? Say, for example, if he's experienced in the industry, say 3 to 5, anywhere between 3 to 5 years, these guys can build you one website page at least in per day. Like they can actually do it in a day's time each website, and they can give it to you. Very simple websites, right? So like this, ensure that you're able to break it down into different parts and then give it to the technical person. In the first instant, tell them everything that you need, but don't confuse them, because the more you confuse, the expensive it becomes for you guys to get it done. So break it down into smaller pieces and ensure you tell them very clearly what they need to do so that they can get it done for you. For you guys who are still students in your third year, I would say acquire the basic skills, go out there, talk to people. Today we have everything online, guys. There's nothing that you cannot learn the basics, at least through YouTube, thanks to the world's largest streaming platform. So you can go to YouTube and learn anything that you want. And a little bit added information you want, you have Udemy, you have Upgrad. So there are so many other courses that you can take online, or we have Coursera, one of the biggest, and you can make use of these platforms and get the technical know-how to start with, right? So two ways, guys, to make a note of it to get your technical know-how. First thing, for all of you who are students, get the technical know-how, because we have the time with us right now. When you're in college, allocate say 2 hours every day, saying that whatever my college hours have been, right? However shitty my college hours have been, like however bad, I don't mind if I, if you have to be an entrepreneur, you should be ready to keep your mind space clean. I will talk about mind space a little bit in the last because it's very important. So whatever happens in college, say for example, you are in a football team and you lost the match, or maybe you flunk a subject in class, but your end goal is preparing to be an entrepreneur. So you should not be worried a lot about flunking in that particular exam, because it's okay, you can clear it in the next sem. But your concentration should also be to ensure that your task for that particular day to build your business should go on as planned. You cannot say, okay, I have some issues in college, I'm not going to work on my entrepreneurial journey today. No, you have to give your time consistently there, right? And then the first thing, lack of funds. Guys, let me tell you today, because I've worked with a lot of investors and I've been in the investment segment for quite some time now. Investment funding or funds to startups is never an issue with us. We have lots of money to give away, but we cannot give it away to everybody who wants money, right? So there must be steps that is followed. There must be a little discipline that is followed for us to trust you guys on the money. At the end of the day, startup funding is one of the riskiest segment of funding, where the money is going to be put on you without any kind of surety, or there is no interest that you will be paying for any of the money that is given to you. Sometimes, yes, there are a few methods where there'll be stakeholders who will be asking for a certain percentage of your startup. But then apart from that, like even there are many angel investors who don't ask you anything but fund in you because they trust in you. So that is what you need to start with developing, right? So let one thing, never think of lack of fund, that there will be no funds available. Funds are always available. But what you need to do is prepare your pitch deck. So an ideal pitch deck would be anywhere between 10 to 12 slides maximum, which will cover 5 basic things. What are the 5 basic things that a pitch deck should consist of? One is of course the problem statement. The second one is what is your unique selling point, USP, or the solution. The second thing would be what is the market research you have done and identified your competitors. So how different are you from your competitors? A bit would be covered in USP, but still market research is something that you should be showing there. And the fourth slide would be something about your team. How good is your team? Why should people be investing in your own particular startup and why not in some other startup? So you tell them how good your team is. So talk a little bit about your team in the presentation. And the fifth one would be the ask about the funding and how are you going to utilize this fund? That is very important, guys. Say, for example, you're asking me for $1,000, let's say $100,000. So if you're asking me for $100,000 for a period of 3 years, you should be very clear saying that in this 3 years, my $100,000 is going where? Maybe a part of it is going for technology development, a part of it is going for building a prototype, a part of it is going for salaries for the employees that you hire, or maybe you would say, we don't prefer that, but still if you say a part of it is going for salary of the founders, it's still fine, but everything should be laid out very clearly in the pitch presentation, which is a 10-slider. My personal recommendation, of course, there are a lot of very good slides that you get. Everything is simple out there. You can refer any of the biggest things. But my personal suggestion and my personal favorite would be Dr. Ratan Tata's slide deck that he gave, which is pretty similar, very small. And it's something that almost all investors would, at least in India, would like to know about. So you can follow those slides. The PDF is available online. And I'm sure your course would also give you a presentation to start with your pitch deck. And if you have any questions, you can let me know as well. So lack of fund, I would say there is no problem here saying that there is lack of fund. The only thing is how clear is your pitch deck, right? So in 10 minutes, you have to capture the interest of that particular investor or the angel who's looking to invest in your startup, or maybe who's listening to you. They might be not looking to invest in you, but they're listening to you. So what you need to do is you have to capture their attention in 10 slides in 10 minutes. So you get 60 seconds for each slide. So you have to ensure that you're able to get your attention there, right? So there's something called elevator pitches also. Essentially 60 in how do you get the interest of an investor in 60 seconds without any pitch deck, without anything. You get 60 seconds of time, and you ensure that you're able to get the interest of that particular investor and say, hey, let's sit and talk more, right? These are a few things. Of course, there are a few people who are doing this as a initiative as well. So we can talk about that sometime else. So that is about the problems, pain points, lack of funding and lack of technical know-how. I think I was able to answer the questions here or help you guys understand how we are going to solve these problems. Have things been a little bit clear, or would you like me to explain more? You can just let me know by a yes or no. If you put in a no, just let me know what more clarity or what is the segment that you want me to answer here. So if you can just let me know if you have understood or not, a yes or no would do. Okay. Okay, so I had got one question in the middle from Sheshachalam. So it was a very interesting question. A lot of us might have this question in mind. Thank you for putting it up there, Sheshachalam. So the question was, how do you say the problem that you have identified is successful? Would we get to know about it only if a startup succeeds or not? Right? So for this, what we need to do is, again, ensure that we have our benchmarks. So whenever you say, I have identified a particular problem, you start putting different benchmarks to this. Say for example, you're going to, sorry guys, so if you say I have identified the problem, but what I need to do is, how do I get to know if this problem is going to get me into a business, right? A good business, a workable startup. What are the benchmarks that you need to apply? The first thing is, see how big the market is, right? Say for example, let me again go back to the e-commerce website, or let me take some other example. Let me take the example of Ola. So Ola, as we know, is one of the biggest aggregators out there for the automotive industry. And what did Ola do? So Ola was just an app aggregator, and the problem they were solving is ensuring that you can book your taxis within 5 minutes, right? So that was the solution or the problem that they were trying to solve. So for this, what Ola did initially was they identified the market. So how big is the market which which your problem is solving, right? So almost anybody who would like to go from point A to point B would want to book a taxi or would want to book something which they can move in it. And this was a pretty huge market for them, right? So the market research is something that you need to do in the initial phases itself to see how big your market is. While doing your market, I think it would have been covered in your market segmentation courses. In market segmentation, you first show the big pie. Say, for example, you say across the world, my market is this big, but again, you split it into different categories, right? For example, again, coming back to Ola, there might be X billion number of people who would be wanting to travel across, or these are the number of people who travel per year. And then they break down it into different things. For example, one of the ways of breaking it down would be, in India, these are the people who would like to travel, and what is the cost range that they're able to pay for traveling X kilometers, right? And then again, you break it down even smaller bits and say, okay, at the end of the day, what you need to understand is, if I am traveling from location A to B, I am able to shell out X amount of rupees, and there are Y number of people who are ready to shell the same amount of money. So market research plays a very important role while you're trying to identify the right kind of problem, because problem identification is a little bit easier while comparing to market study. And then the second thing, how do you identify that your problem identification is good enough? The other ways is, you're able to put in little amount of time, get 10x value to it. Say, for example, you're able to work on solving that problem for, say, 10-15 minutes. I'm giving you a very vague example, but just to help you understand the concept, you work on 10-15 minutes on one particular problem that you have identified. And because you spent that 10-15 minutes, you were able to solve that particular problem for, say, 2 years of time. Right? So you have saved somebody's 2 years of time just because you put in your 10 to 15 minutes. Right? So in these, if your problem is something that is giving you 10x, 20x returns in the initial stages itself, then it's a very good problem that you have identified. You don't have to wait till the end to know if your startup is being successful or not. And then there is another way where you can know if your startup is working or not. This would be the competition, right? So the problem that you have identified, if you think that as soon as you identified this problem, you started working on this particular idea, and suddenly you see that everybody is interested in this particular segment. That means you're going on the right track, but you need to go faster to ensure that you beat your competitors. Say, for example, what happened with the online communication channels, right? So as soon as we hit the pandemic, there were a lot of online communications that came in. Zoom, for example, has been there from a very long time. Even before the pandemic, people have been using Zoom, and not many of them have been able to identify these platforms or make use of this particular platform to go to the next level of it. Right? So you have to identify and make sure that you are better than your competitors. For example, Zoom is still standing out, right? Like there was Google Meet that came up. Of course, Google did so many changes to ensure that people are using Google Meet now, right? Like if you had imagined Hangouts and Google Meet, you see that Google Meets is somewhere here and Hangouts is somewhere here. You would not even have dreamt of using Hangout for more than 2 to 3 people at a time. But now there's Google Meets, which you can do your complete classes on Google Meet. But Zoom did not give up, saying that, hey, we have been in the industry for a very long time and they've been putting their own efforts. And Zoom is still the largest online communication channel that is being used at this point of time. So that is how you ensure that you know your problem identification in every step. So keeping benchmarks and moving forward is the way to ensure that you have the problem, you know that your problem, the problem that you've identified is correct. So Seshachalam, I hope I have answered your question. If it is answered, just let me know if the question has been answered, or if you have more doubts, let me know, please. I have one more question that has come in. This is from Nidhi R. Singh, who says, sir, say suppose I have an idea for a startup, but it is only booming sector in another country and hasn't developed in our country. How can we be sure that the investors would be investing? Okay, very interesting question. So this is where we discuss about being there in the right time and right place, right? So for example, say there's something that has clicked in say the UAE, there's a startup that was doing very well in the UAE. So you want to bring that particular startup here in India, but you don't know if you're able to convince the investors that it'll work here, right? So what you need to do is go do more research on that particular business to see how is it that they were able to cater to that particular industry in their particular country. If it is a very country specific problem, the investors will not be very interested to invest in. But if it is a duplicatable model, say for example, Ola again, or let's start with Uber, right? So Uber is just being replicated across the nations, right? So it's the same thing as Ola, but again, it was there in some other nation and it came to India and it is still working fine. It is actually giving competition to the Ola market. So how do you ensure you convince the investors? You do your research properly, saying that this is how it worked in that particular country, and it is not a country specific business that I'm targeting towards, or not a country specific idea. This can work in any particular country. And how is it going to work? You have to show them the market again. Guys, let me tell you one thing investors would be interested in. Apart from a very few investors who would invest in the startups to ensure that the segment grows or the community of startup grows, all other investors would be very much interested to see how their own money grows. At the end of the time, that is the whole point of investing, right? To be fair enough to them, you have to show how are you going to ensure that you're going to give them returns. When I say returns, the next question that might come up is how much of returns would the investors be satisfied in? How much is not greedy, right? So to answer this question, I would like to put your perspective straight. So what are the various options in, okay, I'll not get into investments right now. I'll take this question up again when I talk about investments. To answer the question right off, how do I ensure that a booming sector in some other country is possible in our country also? You have to, again, as I said, you have to dig deep into that particular business and ensure that the market for that particular business is not only that particular country. For example, if you say I am going to build a startup on baseball, right? I'm just giving you a very vague example. So baseball is usually played somewhere in the US. It is not a very popular sport here in India. If you say I am going to build something for the baseball industry here in India because it's working out in the US, the investor will firstly, yes, he'll be intrigued saying that, okay, if there's a lot of risk involved, but if it works, I might be making big chunks. But how are you going to go there and ensure that baseball is going to work here in India? Right? So you have to give them a step-by-step saying that, okay, this is how baseball industry started booming in the US. This is how people came in. Maybe you want to throw in grand challenges saying you want people to make their own baseball slugs, as they are called, or maybe you want something innovative that is coming up. So you have to figure out what that particular part is which made it popular in that particular country, and how are you going to duplicate that here in India, right? For example, something that might confuse you here is, for example, in the US, if you say $100, everybody might be ready to spend $100 in the US. But then the $100 gets converted into 6,500 rupees here in India, approximately. So how are you going to convert this? Like how many of the Indians will be ready to spend 6,500 on an ongoing basis? That is something that you have to consider, right? The pool of the market is something that the investors would be very interested to know about. So that's how you ensure that you're able to convince them here. Okay, I hope I answered your point, Nidhi. Just let me know over the chat box if the point was answered. We can. It's a very lengthy topic to discuss about investments. I'll cover a little bit more about investments there, but again, we can discuss about it. And I got in one more question. How will we estimate how much initial funding we will be asking the potential investors for, and how much we will be investing ourselves in percentages? Okay, the easiest method is to know how much of money do you actually require to run your business, right? So how much of leeway can you yourself give as a founder? So for example, again, this plays out very importantly with age, going practically. Say for example, if you're a student, you have some time to explore multiple things. So, you can take the risk of not investing a lot, but putting a lot of your money. So this is where the slogan which you have heard from your childhood days, time is money, comes into actual sense here, right? So as a founder, there are two things that you can do to your business. So you either put in money or you put in hours, right? So putting in hours is going to be a difficult task, but if you are somebody who says, hey, I can work 20 hours a day, not a problem. Health factors is different, guys. When I say you're putting in 20 hours of work, there are things that we need to consider about how healthy will you be at a later point of time. But yes, if you say I can put 20 hours of time, I have been healthy, I can put that 20 hours a day time into my own startup, then you don't have to ask the investors a lot. I mean, you don't have to put in money yourself. You can ask your investors. All this comes in your pitch deck. While you're preparing your pitch deck, you can do it, saying when you're working 20 hours a day, right, you know what you will be doing for that particular 20 hours. So you'll be very clear with the timelines. So when you're this clear with the timeline, the investor also gets to know that, okay, this particular person is somebody who I can trust, who knows what he is doing or what she is doing, right? So they'll be more comfortable investing in. So that is where you ensure that one of the ways where you ensure how much of initial funding will be required. The other things is, again, there are various expenses that you need to consider. Of course, there might be, especially when you're prototyping something, this is a hardware industry, and here without money, it is very difficult to do something. And like a website where within say around 500,000 rupees a year, you can start building your own website, maintaining it for a complete year. Here, if you are saying I'm building a prototype, each prototype might itself cost you anywhere between 5 to 6,000 every time you make an iteration in a prototype, right? So how do you ensure that you're going to differentiate the amount in which the founder is giving? As a rule of thumb, ensure that how much of a money you're taking in, you don't give the investor more than 50% of your startup. All investors combined. I'm not saying give them 50% in the first go itself. If you're going for seed funding, all you're going to part with your startup is 2 to 3% maximum, right? Let me, again, this is an investment related question. I'll come back to investment segment while I talk about the investment segment. Just bear with me for a little while longer. I will come to the investment segment. But how do you, to answer the question very broadly at this point of time and money, you need to consider this. What do you want to give your startup? Do you want to give it some money, or do you want to give it time? If you are saying I have a lot of time, I can give that particular time, then you don't have to give a lot of money. But if you say, hey, there are a lot of competitors in the market, I will need to put in these monies. So then you'll have to look at various ways of getting these monies. And how do you put how much percentage? I'll just cover it in a short while. Hang in with me for some more time, and I'll cover the investment part, because I understand there are two questions that have already come in with regards to investment. I'll be covering it in the investment segment. So Rohit, to answer to your question, Rohit Srikanth, I think you'll have to wait a little bit longer in this session. So cool. So next thing, the competitors and the USP. Okay, I got one more question. So I'll just read out this question so that I know what this is. I'm running a business in small scale, and I have a quite good sales on that small scale, but on a larger scale, how do I convince? Okay, so small scale to large scale conversion, not a very big issue. I'll let you guys know this. Small scale. So Nidhi, I'll just hold this for a bit. I'm just making a note of all the investment related questions that are coming up. I'll take this when I talk about investments. Percentage shares. Okay, did I miss anything? Okay, cool. So competitors and USPs. So how many of you here have done competitor analysis or market research analysis, and you have a slide which shows something like a pie chart where you have 4 different segments saying that, hey, these are my competitors. I am better than each one of them in this particular way. How many of you have done something like this until now? Put me a yes or no here. So how many of you have done it here? If you have done a market research, a very specific market research saying that these are the competitors, I have 4 segments in my presentation and I know who the exact competitors are and I have this in my presentation. All teams have done it. Very interesting to know, Mr. Abhishek. I'm sure you guys are doing a great job over there. So in this particular segment, what is it that you will be covering, right? So I'm sure you have covered this because all of you have done it. When you talk about competitors, don't just choose the same type of competitors. For example, again, since I'm talking a lot of Ola, Uber, let me say you're an automotive, you're in the automotive segment, something very similar to Ola, Uber. You can put Ola and Uber in the same bracket. Don't just consider them 2 different companies just because they're 2 different entities. For you as a startup who's just coming up, right? Both Ola and Uber fall under the same category where there are large startups, they can gobble you up on the first day itself. Like for example, as soon as you try to put something out there, they have the ability to gobble up your startup either by purchasing you, that is a good thing to happen, or they might come up with their own business strategy on day 1 or day X, which might kill your business. So that is one kind of competitor that you have to look at. And the second segment would be people who are in your own levels, say anywhere between 1 to 5 years. And these people are also struggling to make it to the big player, big chunk, or the big boys club as we call them, maybe the 100 crore club as we call it, right? So that falls in the second category of your market. So since you guys have done your market research, I will not cover a lot on these market aspects. I'll be moving on to USPs again. I think along with competitors, you would have done USPs as well. So moving on, I would like to stress a little bit about prototyping here, because I'm sure most of you would be, coming up with hardware segments and hardware equipments that you would like to start a startup with, given that all of you are from electronics background, at least one of your subjects is electronics. So what is the best way to have a world-class product or a prototype build? So this is something that you have to, make sure from the very initial stages. So how do you build a good prototype? So when you're talking about this, right? So the first thing I would say is always ensure that you use the right tool, guys. In India, we are very much accustomed to saying "chalta hai, chalega, बाद में देखेंगे." और कुछ जुगाड़ कर ले, अभी कुछ जुगाड़ कर लेंगे, फिर बाद में थोड़ा सही कर लेंगे, जब पैसा आता है तब सही कर लेंगे, right? So these are the few things that we get to hear in the entrepreneurial world very often, at least here in India, right? But if you're actually looking to build a world-class product that you want to compete especially with China given their low rates, or you want to compete with Europe given their best qualities, you have to ensure that you do the right things and follow procedures from day 1. Right? Say for example, if the tolerance level of that particular prototype that you're building is plus or minus 0.01%, it has to be 0.01%, guys. It cannot be 0.02%, right? Chalta hai attitude does not work in the prototype world, because you're competing with 2 big players here. One is the Western market, where they already have very good products. They already have everything state of the art there. And then we are here competing down south with the China market, where they can give you anything at a very low cost, right? So in between here, you have to ensure that you have the right balance between your quality and your economy, right? So that is where you have to ensure that you use the right tool. Right? Say for example, when you're prototyping, if your model has to be done in a 3D printing way, it has to be done in the 3D printing machine itself, looking at the particular method you use. Again, in 3D printing, we have different machines that we come across. We have SLA, we have FDM. Looking at your structures, you have to decide, saying that will FDM work better for my product, or will an SLA machine work for my product? And you have to ensure that you have to go for that particular product, right? Just because, say, hey, SLM 3D printing machine is available for my college. In my college, I'll just go for it. I have to travel a little bit outside for the FDM machine. Let me not just not take the risk of that particular FDM machine. Let's just get it done with the SLA machine. This will not work in the entrepreneurial world, right? However tough it is, you have to ensure that you do the right things in the right way. Using the right tool while prototyping is the key to ensure that you have world-class products or prototypes being built. And there are a lot of agencies which can help you out. You don't have to spend a lot of money here to do this. There are a lot of agencies, like for example, here in India, we are here, IKP Knowledge Park or the KTech Innovation Hub set up by the Startup Karnataka Initiative. We can help you build the prototypes, but ensure that you notice all of these people who can help you out and go take their help to get the things done in the right way, right? There is no compromise while building your prototypes, at least, because if your prototype falls, especially for hardware startups, your entire startup falls. So that's about prototyping. How many of you have a prototype design or something built here? Like, if you can tell me, or if you can at least, let me know the names or models what you've been working on. That'll be great to help me understand how many hardware startups are over here. Like if you're a hardware startup, planning a hardware startup or a prototype startup, just ping in the word hardware into the box. Any hardware startups, or how many of you are hardware startups here? Okay. Okay, maybe I'll look at it when I get the sheets for evaluations with respect to what kind of startups you've been doing. Let's move on to the next point, which would be the team, the importance of a good team and an advisory board. So when you're trying to get a team, right? So one thing you need to understand is you don't start doing a business with somebody because you're just good friends. That is not the only criteria. Of course, compatibility plays a very key role in taking your business to the next level. But apart from that, you ensure that you have your responsibilities very clearly laid out between the team members. I understand that there are about 4 to 5 people in each of these teams. So unlike an engineering project where, maybe 1 or 2 students does the project and the rest of them just put their name in it, that should not repeat over here in the entrepreneurial world. What we need to observe here is if there are 5 of you working on this particular product or a startup, each 5 of you have very specific responsibilities. Say, for example, the first person is responsible to ensure he or she builds the complete business plan. So the complete business plan building will be his responsibility, but he can take the help of others and ensure that he comes up with a business plan for that particular deadline. Right? So the business segment can be handled by one particular founder and he or she will be responsible for that, right? So if it has to be done or if it is not getting done, then they will be held responsible. Even while going further, when we are talking about share allocation or who share goes at what point of time, so all this will be taken into consideration as to how responsible each founder is, right? Just because you're 2 friends and you're starting business together, it does not mean both of you get equal shares in the company. It's not a 50-50 startup that we do, right? We'll have to see how much of responsibilities each one of you taking. For example, if you say there are 4 people, you don't distribute it equally as to 25 to 400% ho jayega. It is not how you distribute the shares of your company for your team. You have to ensure that you chalk down the responsibilities of the team very elaborately. So you know who's going to do marketing, under marketing, what are the various responsibilities that they have, and who is going to do sales, what are the various responsibilities of this particular for sales. And the most important feature for a startup is who's going to build the technology bit of it, who will be responsible for it. And this technology guy, it's always good to have the technical know-how, or at least should be able to manage this particular technical know-how, right? So that's about team. And it's not just enough if you have a very good team with you guys, because we see startups are coming up from various segments. In the college level, if I have to talk about, we have various incubation setup at each of the premier engineering institutes like IITs and IIMs, and then coming down to various Atal incubation centers. There are a lot of Atal incubation centers set up as well. So, and then we have each of the engineering colleges now have entrepreneurship cells. So there are a lot of young people who are forming teams and coming up with the startups. But then the success rate also depends on who is backing you up, right? Say, for example, who is telling you or who is ensuring that you don't, I would not say you don't fail, you don't slow down in your process, right? Because failure is only the first step. Post that, you have a lot of other things to do. But what does a failure do? It only slows down your process. It does not do anything else. It only slows your process a bit. So what is the advisory board or the mentors who are behind you? It is very important to have the right kind of mentors with you from a very early stage on, right? Usually you don't have to part any equity to these mentors, but it is very good to ensure that you get a good mentor who is not looking to, only for the money bit of it, but he or she wants to develop your startup and wants to grow with you. So try to find mentors or advisory boards. Try to, when I say mentors, these people should have very good skill sets themselves, and they should have some industry experience in their own domains, right? Maybe investment, they have good amount of experience, and or maybe they are very good in, say, for example, business, building a business or strategic partnerships. They're very good in strategic partnerships, or technology wise they've been doing great. Now they want to start something on their own, but since they are old, they can't start. See, like, try to find the right kind of people there. So hand in hand, a team and an advisory board both go hand in hand, right? So that is how important both of them, a team and an advisory board, would be for your startup. And also, guys, when I'm talking about team, it is very important to note here. I'm sure a lot of us are young here, and the young crowd does not want to listen to anybody else, right? You think you're doing the right thing, especially when you do a lot of market research and you see that the problem you have identified is very correct. And when somebody says, hey, no, I don't think it is correct, you have to pivot from there, right? You might say, hey, I don't think that particular person is saying something right. Let me just do the way I want, right? Never turn a blind eye towards something. Listen very patiently and then go on to see if you can make changes to make your product better. Never become ignorant. Never turn a blind eye. Understand the other person's perspective because they're telling it because they've experienced it. From there, try to see if you can change or if what you're doing is correct. Always ensure as an entrepreneur, it is very important to know that you are humble and you're always ready to learn. A teachable founder is again a very key aspect while we're looking to fund into different startups as well. So that covers my team and advisory board as well. Moving on to the next one, parallel lines of customers. So this might be a little hard, especially for hardware startups. As we call it, hardware is hard, guys. There's no other way of going through it. But while you're doing hardware, try to interesting question that just came in. Wouldn't it be best to make your investor your mentor by offering him advisory shares? So this is a very tricky thing. I would very strongly recommend that you don't make your investors your mentors. To find out why, just stick with me for just one more topic of parallel lines of a customer, and right after that I'm going to take up the investor. It's a very tricky thing why you should not have your investors as your mentors. I'll just cover that in a bit. One second, let me note this down. This is an interesting thing that came up. Investors and mentors. Okay. So guys, when you're saying you're going to do an hardware startup, right? So try to see, of course, your 100% concentration at all points should be on your startup. But said that, I would say just divert a little bit. 10% of your attention should be in lines of your startup itself, but you should start generating some kind of revenue from the very early stage startups itself. Say, for example, you're building your hardware utility. Let me give you a very simple example. A simple example would be you're offering some kind of fixture, you're coming up with a fixture startup. Say, for example, you're building a clamp, which is a new design. You're designing on that particular clamp, which will hold two pieces together. Like maybe you're coming up with this simple design, which is to hold this particular segment. You have identified that particular product, which is going to hold your product in one place, but the design that you're coming up with is new. That is what your startup is building. Okay, so said that this might be a really tough task to ensure that you are coming up with a new design. You might have to spend all the time on the design to ensure that every minute detail of your design is perfect, but don't spend all the time on it. Parallelly, if there are 5 of you, there should be one of you at least. If it is a 5 people startup I'm telling you about, if it is just 2 people, even you can spend very less amount of time. But if it is a 5 people startup, then there should be one person who's exclusively trying to sell the services, right? Go into the service segment. If there are 5 of you, see if you, because when you're doing a prototype, right, we assume that when you're trying to do a prototype of this particular shape, like whatever shape that is, if to design part of it, we assume or we think that you're good in designing, right? And design as a service is a very upcoming industry, and you can start, bringing in some revenues to ensure that whatever revenues that you bring through your services, you put up to building your prototype. So what does this do? It will not make your startup rich, but what this does in the other way is, when you go to investors, it will make them think, okay, so this particular startup is very focused. They want to ensure that they're able to sustain themselves. Even if I don't invest, they'll find a way to get the money themselves, because they see from the very beginning you have been able to generate some kind of cash flow. It might be not lakhs of money, it might be in thousands or 10,000s, but you're still able to generate that particular chunk of money by yourself, right, without the help of the investors. So this is something very interesting that you have to know for parallel lines of customers. So especially if you're into prototyping, try to identify what is that one segment where you can start generating a parallel line of income, which is easier, right? It should not be as tough as your final product, but it should be the smaller kinds. And there's another way of going about it, right? Say, for example, you have 2 kinds of prototypes. The first prototype is very easy to build, and there are chances that you can sell it in the market, start selling the product, right? But then you say, okay, my product is not that effectively built. Let me go on to the next one and improvise and then sell it. Don't wait for improvising your product. Instead, just start selling your product number 1 and parallelly start working on your product number 2, that is upgrade 1, or as we call it 2.0 or 3.0, such kind of thing, right? So that is where having parallel lines of income, that is being cash positive, is a very good sign in a startup, even from the very early stages. Now we come to the big point that a lot of you have been asking, a very important point when we talk about startups: investments. So what are the various types of investments that are available? I'm sure the course has covered it for you. Just to touch on the basics, a few of the investment methods available is your own bootstrap method, where a couple of founders come in together. They invest about X amount of money, like 5 of you together put in about 10,000 each. You have 50,000 to start with. That's a good runway to start your business with. Or you say, hey, I can also ask my friends and family to put in some amount of money. So maybe each one of you can gather around another 50,000. So you have a 1 lakh rupee to start with. All of this is the first approach called the bootstrap method of running your startup. Right? Friends and family or founders' own money is called the bootstrap money, which will help them to kick off from ground. So what are the steps we are looking at in a bootstrap startup? How effectively have they utilized the fund? What is the burn ratio? So the burn ratio is nothing much. How have you spent your fund, right? So when you already know that your cash crunch, how have you tried to save the money, and how have you, saved it? Say, for example, you have only 1 lakh rupees in your kitty, and you hire a level 1 developer who costs 1 lakh rupees to just build your website. You'll be like, okay, as soon as the website is built, I can go to an investor and tell him, hey, look, I have spent 1 lakh rupees on this particular website. Now give me more money so that I can add features to it. If this is what you think investment is about, sorry guys, you won't get any investment on that particular product, because that is not how you spend your money. Instead, if you have the same 1 lakh rupee to start with, and you have segregated into different things, right? Say for example, initially you spent an X amount of money to, the major chunk in hardware startups will go to prototyping. So you put an X amount of money to prototyping, say around 30 to 50% of money goes into prototyping, and 10% or 20% goes into initial marketing, and 10-20% goes into building your own personal persona, developing your own skill sets. You can, you can take the money that you've invested in your startups to upgrade your own skills as well. That is a positive sign when we are looking at investments. That is still okay. And then try to have as many less outsiders as possible. That is third party vendors or outsourcing, right? If you are outsourcing in the initial stages of your startup itself, the investor will say, why don't I invest on that particular guy who has done this work for you, right? Why should they invest in you, right? So that is where you have to ensure that you keep your outsourcing to as much minimum as possible and try to do everything by your own. That is where the whole concept of starting something up comes up, right? That is the basic of it. Ensure that you don't spend everything on one particular thing. You should have a diverse spending criteria which we'll be looking at. And then second thing is ensure that your outsourcing is as minimum as possible. When I say outsourcing, I also mean you don't get something done for free and then you say, hey, I'll give you shares of my startup. It does not mean you've got anything done for free. It means you've got something by losing a part of your company. A lot of times investors would be ready to invest in startups where they've got something outsourced by paying an X amount of money. But if you say, hey, I've given a 10% of my company to this particular guy to sorry guys, so I've given a 10% of my company to develop the website for me. Now you give me the rest of the money. Investors would not be interested again in this particular way of the things that are structured in your company, right? So these are a few things. So bootstrap, things to do and not do while raising money. And the second thing is angel investors. So after your bootstrapping is over, we would go to angel investors, seek money from different angels. So angel investors are those people who have some disposable income with them that they are able to take the risk and they might be willing to invest in your startups. So how do you identify angels? So there are a lot of platforms where you can identify angels very easily these days. There are a lot of associations that they have formed themselves. Like the biggest angel network here in India is the Indian Angel Network. Almost every state has a representative of Indian Angel Networks. You can get in touch with them. You send your pitch deck to them and they'll let you know if they can fund you or not. Of course, it's not as easy as we talk, but this is how the process goes, right? And then there are a lot of other state-specific angels also. For example, we have Chennai Angels, a very proactive investing segment in the south. And we have Mumbai Angels, again, something in Maharashtra, very active segment. So these are angel investors. And how angel investors usually work is, the angels put in money if one of the major angels is putting a money. Say, for example, in Indian Angel Networks, there'll be one particular person who does a very, the angel investors do a very good thorough check of due diligence of your startup as to what is the valuation of your startup, how much is your startup valued at, and at looking at that, say, for example, an angel investor says, I'm ready to invest. The other angels just follow up because they know if that particular angel is investing, it's a good risk to take, right? So that is how usually angel networks work. And the angels pull in the money together and they will come and invest the chunk in your startup, right? That is all angel investing basics that you need to know. Moving on, after the angel investors, there is pre-series round Before I go to pre-series, along with angel investors, side by side, you can look at various grants that are available from the Government of India and other places as well. For example, Startup India runs a lot of challenges regularly on a monthly basis to ensure that people are able to get various grants. We have Nidhi Prayas, especially for hardware startups, and for biotechnology startups, we have BioNest. And we have Elevate from Startup Karnataka that happens once a year to ensure that we're able to cater to the requirements here in Karnataka. So similarly, there are many grants. There are universities which run startup grants as well. For example, VIT Vellore is a good established TBI. They have a technology business incubator, an established one. So they run various challenges. There are a lot of other TBIs like Atal Incubation Centers, as I told you. Karnataka itself has three. All three are situated here in Bangalore. BMC being in Bangalore, you can take advantage of all these three Airtel incubation centers. They run a lot of challenges themselves. We as IKP Knowledge Park, we run a lot of grant challenges where the winner gets a good chunk of money to start with. So there will be various grants that you can apply for, and you can participate in these grants to get your initial runway money. Right, so that's about the initial stages: bootstrap, grants and funding, and then angel investors. Post that, we'll be talking about pre-series. Excuse me. So for pre-series, there will be various things we'll be looking at. So in pre-series, we'll be looking, the amount we will be looking at will be anywhere between 100,000 to 500,000 to we say 100 to 500,000 is where US dollars is where we'll be looking at for pre-series rounds. You'll be able to raise these kinds of money with any of the established angel networks, or maybe you want to get foreign investments done into your startups. You can raise these monies, or very early stage venture capitalists who would be looking to invest in the early stage startups would also want to take the risk in the pre-series A round, and that is where you get your pre-series A round. Post that, you use this pre-series A money to ensure that you're able to improve your business by multiple folds, and then once we see this, your startup is doing well, it is able to sustain itself, right? After, by the time you reach your pre-series round, anywhere between 1 to 2 years of your startup should be able to sustain itself, right? They are able to generate some positive amount of cash flow. The startup is able to function. At least your operational charges, if not making profit, you should be able to cover your own operational charges without the requirement of the funding coming into your startup. Always remember, guys, when you're asking for investments, investment is not for taking your operational costs or day-to-day charges into account, right? So you don't take investments to spend it on your day-to-day activities like paying your salaries or upgrading, I mean, not upgrading, paying your salaries or ensuring that you have your housekeeping done or you have your product come out to the market. This is not why you seek investments. You seek investments for growth. Say, for example, you have sold an X amount of product, or you have built one kind of prototype. You want to upgrade the same prototype into the next level, or you want to sell it to another city. Say, for example, you are very popular in Bangalore. Now you want to extend it to Delhi. So that is where you go and ask investment, or that is how you ask investments. You don't say, hey, I have this plan or I have this idea. Without doing anything, I want you to put money into my startup so that I can start, building a prototype, or I can start selling in Bangalore or one city, right? So that is not how you ask for investments. You say, hey, look, this is something that I've done without your money. If your money comes into me, I can do multiple folds of this, right? That is how you ask for investments. Post the pre-series A, there is a lot of continuation which will go on to A, B, C, D, E. We have seen till H going on, so they just keep increasing the alphabets as when we give more money into the segment. So yes, so investments. One more thing, what is a unicorn? How many of you know what a unicorn startup is at this point of the journey? If you know what a unicorn startup is, just ping in yes, or if you don't know what a unicorn startup is, just ping in no, so that from there I can take it forward. Okay, unicorn startups, I'm still waiting for more answers to come in. If you know what a unicorn startup is, tell me yes or no. Okay. Interesting to know that the majority of the answers that I'm receiving is you guys don't know what a unicorn startup is, but still is okay. At the early stages, it's not necessary to know what a unicorn startup is. But a unicorn startup is a startup which is evaluated at $1 US billion, right? So that is what a unicorn startup is. Bindushri, you're raising your hand. You'd like to say something? Okay, I just think it's technical glitch. You were just trying to see what the feature was. Okay, so what is a unicorn startup? A unicorn startup is a startup that is valued at a rate of $1 billion USD, right? So if your startup is valued at $1 billion US, then it's called a unicorn startup. It is not the revenue that your startup is generating, but it's the evaluation of your startup as to how much the evaluation stands in. This is where the due diligence of the company is done. And they say, okay, your startup is worth 1,000 US dollars, billion US dollars, right? So that's what a unicorn startup is. And how do we evaluate these startups to be at 1,000 USDs? 1 billion. So how do we do this? Is again, there are various things we consider, right? So what is the market segment that they have captured? Say, for example, 100% is the pie of that particular startup. For example, Byju's, they've occupied 60% of the market. It is a very rare situation when any startups occupy 60% of the market share, but still they've occupied this much. And for 60% of the market share of this particular startup, this is how much they're evaluated at. And then we look at the resources that they have. Maybe they have some infrastructure built in, or they have some tech stack, the value of that particular tech stack. Sorry, guys. So these are a few things that we look at to know if what a unicorn startup or what the evaluation of that particular startup is. Right. So I hope you guys are clear as to what a unicorn startup is. Just to make it more clear, I'll just repeat it again. A unicorn startup is a startup that is evaluated at a range of 1 billion USD. So if your startup is valuated at $1 billion, then your startup is considered as a unicorn startup. You don't have to worry a lot about it at very early stages. We'll take the discussions forward at later points of time, right? So with this, I would just take up the questions regarding investments now. I have got another question regarding patenting. Let me just look at it. Patenting is not great tradition followed in India. How can we be sure our ideas aren't stolen? We pitch them into investors. Okay. Basic question coming in. How do we ensure that our ideas are not stolen when we pitch it to investors or anybody else? How do we know that our idea is not pitched by or used by anybody else? I'll cover this point because it's very initial one. Guys, today in the startup ecosystem, your ideas are not. Yeah, I have 20 minutes to wrap up. No worries. I just have a couple of questions. We will be on time. So how do we ensure that our ideas are not stolen? So today, coming up with a very fresh idea, I would say it's not possible or it's next to impossible. Say, for example, if you say I have an idea, I have an idea that I want to try out here in India, there might already be somebody who's trying out something in Africa, right? You never know. And investors are trying, because you're talking to investors, investors usually have a huge network. They can find out what is happening in any part of the world very easily. So if you say I'm bringing that particular idea and trying to do it here, it does not work, right? So the idea, it is not given that particular importance these days, at least, because in today's 21st century world, it's not about how good your idea is, but how good are you as a startup founder in implementing that idea, right? That is what matters, guys. How good are you as a founder in implementing that particular idea? Because if I just sit today and start listing ideas, I can start listing 100 ideas which might be fresh or which might not be fresh, right? So ideas are not something that is very unique these days. It is how fast you can implement on it, right? So that is where I told you, coming back to the competitor slide or the marketing slide, which all of you have done, that is where you analyze, okay, this is my particular idea. There are already people working on it. When you do your marketing, marketing research, you already understand that there are people who are already doing that, right? So how do you ensure that you are better than them? How do you ensure that with the limited funds that you have, you can make things faster than them, right? That is where at IKP we have our slogan, we help you build world-class products faster. Because doing anything faster than your competitor is what is important today. It's not how you maintain the secrecy of your idea, but said that there are standard procedures where you can start patenting. If your idea is really unique, I'm sure in the IPR course of yours, you have covered the pointer where you can get your products patented in different countries. Again, patenting in itself is a very huge topic, where patenting in one country does not mean that your product cannot be made in another country. Depending on how or what the design is, the patenting experts will be able to tell you where you need to get your patenting done. That is where finding, if you are in the hardware segment, it is very important to find the right patenting persons also. They should be up on their toes at all points of time. They'll be able to know what is happening in the segment, what are the new products that came in, what are the various features of these products. So while choosing your IP expert, you have to be very careful. And yes, in the hardware segment, I would say if there is a 0.1% of uniqueness also, please go and get things patented. Don't think that, hey, this is just a 0.1 variation, I don't have to get it patented. Even if you find any 0.1% very unique feature, just get it patented. This will be of help. And why patenting? If you're asking money, that is still fine. A lot of investors would like to invest in patent. But again, if you're asking investors money for patenting, they might ask for patenting right. Never give them the patenting right. Try to see if you can build your own pool for getting patenting done. What you can do is get a patent done in one particular country for that particular product. Say, for example, your product can be patented in India more economically. So get your product patented here in India economically before you go into the investor and tell him, hey, look, I've got my patent here in India. Now to get it patented in other, I know I can get my product patented in other countries also, but since it's a costly affair, put the money in, let's patent it together, right? But never ever patent it in the name of the investor. As a founder, the patenting should always be on the name of the company or the founders. Please ensure that. And moving forward to the other questions that we had, a small difference between an angel investor and venture capital. Okay, so venture capitalists are people who are more serious investors. So they usually come in when you're looking at pre-series A or series ABC and so on. Venture capitalists come at a later point of time. And when do you go to a venture capitalist usually is when you have something out in the market and you're making good amounts of revenue, or you've shown the proof of concept and say, hey, look, I have been able to generate some kind of revenue, and now with replicating the same process, I can generate more money. So if this is the stage that you are in, that is when you go to a venture capitalist. If you have some very solid proof, that is where you go to a venture capitalist. Otherwise, if you're very early stage, say for example, for all of you, you're still not even the angel investor stage until you have your pitch decks ready, a complete solid pitch deck with a prototype if you're a hardware startup. That is where you go to the angel investor. So the name angel investors come in because they are ready to put in the money without any kind of solid proof, right? So they're taking a lot of risk. That is why they're called angels. They trust in the team, they trust in the idea, and they put the money into you, right? So that is where they are called angel investors, who come in at a very early stage. Very early stage investors who come right after your friends and families are angel investors. And people who invest at a later point of time, they also invest a lot of money. Say for example, if an angel investor investing anywhere between 1 lakh to 100 lakhs, an angel investor's investment usually, a venture capitalist's investment usually start from 1 CR, 2 CR. So that is the amount of money that we are looking from venture capitalists. Said that, it is not that angel investors will not invest that kind of money, but there are different ways you approach these guys, right? But usually, as a rule of thumb, very early stage investment, you go to angel investors. Mature startups, or if you have something of good proof that is there in the market, you go to venture capitalists, right? The growth stage is for venture capitalists. And before I take the questions coming in, I'll just cover, there was a question on small scale to large scale. So I just forgot the question of who put this. So if you can just ping me that question again. What was it that you asked about small scale to large scale? I will try to take up that question again. It has got mixed up with all the questions that have been coming in. And next stage is percentage of shares, right? So how do you ensure that how much of percentage of share is for the founders and how much of share is given to the investors, right? So as a rule of thumb, even in your series A, B, C, D, whatever the alphabet is, we should always try to ensure that 50% of the company at least is with the founders, right? Maybe if there are two of you, ensure that the two of you combined together have at least 50% of the company at all points of time, because at the end of the day, you're working you're working very hard because you want the company or you want the returns out of the company. So 50%, try to retain the 50% of the company. The rest 50%, you can don't give it up in the first go itself, saying that, hey, put me all the money initially, I'll give you 50%. Never ever do that. In your first stance, initially how we look at it is, any founders or friends and family, usually I would say don't part anything with friends and family in the initial stages. Tell them, hey guys, I'll give you something if something works out. Try to get people like that. Or if you really want to part something, try to break it down into 0.5%, 0.03%. So try to break it as small as possible and give it to friends and family. And then second round of angel investments, anywhere between somewhere between 2 to maximum 10%, right? That is how much you're going to shed in your angel investment rounds. 10% is a lot of money, guys, or a lot of percentage of your startup to shed with. I would say ideal amount would be 7%, right? So 7% of your startup is what you're going to share in your angel investment round, nothing more than that. Never ever go above 7 to or maximum 10%. So let's have a thing, not more than 10% is what you'll be shedding down in your angel investment rounds. Until you're even for pre-series, that is where the second thing comes for pre-series, where you'll be shedding say another 3-4%, or maybe you'll be buying out an angel investors and giving it to the next person coming in. So try to keep your giving away of the shares anywhere between 7 to 10%, right? So that is how much you have to be there in the first angel investment rounds. How do we decide this? We decide this on multiple factors as to what is the network the investor is coming with. So this leads me to my next question as well. Investor versus mentor. Why do I always say never have your investor as a mentor, right? Guys, today we are in the 21st century. The startup world has evolved a lot. Never ever take money from some investor who says, guys, I'll give you the money, do whatever you want. These are the kind of investors you want to avoid. Initially, yes, it's very tempting saying that, okay, I got a lot of money, I can do a lot of stuff with the money because I know what to do. But believe me, at a later point of time, you want investors who have the knowledge about stuff, right? Say, for example, they have very good connects. They'll be able to open doors for various places. Say, for example, there's an investor who says, hey, I have my reach in the tech segment, or maybe I have the reach in XYZ companies. So they are working with say 10-15 companies themselves as investors. They are a part of these companies in different roles. So try to get investors of these profiles, because they'll be able to give you businesses generated, right? So they can give you these connects which will help your startup do business, and this business turns into revenue which is profitable for everybody. But then if you just go with investors who come in with money, what happens after the money is all done, right? So you try something for a year utilizing this particular investor's money, and God forbid, but the startup fails. You're not able to generate any income. What next, right? You need the second round of funding again. You will be funding hungry. You will be hungry for more funds. But again, one thing is this investor will not be ready to invest because his funds have already gone waste. And secondly, it is difficult to find other investors because you've already burnt the money of one investor without giving him any returns. So that is why ensure that you don't go behind investors who are just putting the money for returns, or who just say, I'm going to give you money, do whatever you want. These are the investors who, even if you have in your kitty, they should be very less in number. You should have more investors who can be able to have a lot of connection, open different doors. But again, these are not your mentors. Your mentors is somebody who just give you or help you understand different bits of it. For example, when you're an entrepreneur, you should have different knowledges. Just because you guys come from the core segments of electronics, it does not mean that you should not know coding, right? You should at least know basics of coding. You might not be able to write or do any code, but you should know what these codes are for and how do coding work. right? So similarly, this basic knowledge, how do you get these basic knowledge? You go to these mentors, they help you out. Say for example, you want something for marketing, you should have that one person particular in marketing who can help you out with your marketing segment. So these are mentors who will help you get the knowledge that is required in different segments, right? So for this, maybe you can give them shares. Equity is very different from shares again, guys. Equity is something that you part away a part of your company, while shares is again what you give after making your company an IPO or something like that. In this session, I will not go much into IPO or what are sweat equity and all that. This, it will be too much of overload for one session. Yeah, so basically, and another major reason as to why not to have your investors and mentors. Always remember, guys, when you bring in investors, investors always, like it or not, they come in with the mindset of doubling or increasing their money, right? So while doing so, and investors, yeah, thank you, Abhishek. IPOs are initial public offering. I'll not touch about that in this particular segment. We can have another session. Where was I? So investors. So when the investors come in, it is the mindset of the investors who always want to increase their profits, right? So while doing this, because it is their job to get the money increase, the investors or the mindset that they have, even though knowingly or unknowingly, if they are your mentors, what they tend to do is in the mindset of trying to help you increase the revenue so that their own profits increase, they tend to give wrong advices. Believe me, I have personally seen this. I have seen a complete company go down because of having an investor as their own mentors. There will be losses incurred because knowingly or unknowingly, it so happens that even unknowingly investors give you advices which will in the end only result them, because they would have anyways get the money to them if your startup succeeds, right? So it's always not a very good idea to have investors as your mentors. Try to find a different set of people for your mentors. You can part equities or like sweat equity with them, or you can part other kinds of shares with them. There are a lot of things that you can part away with mentors. So we can deal with that some other time. But yes, as a basic, try to not have your investors as your board members or advisory board. Have it very separate. So these were the few questions come in that came in, guys. We have 8 minutes. I'm going to take just one more question that is already there. If you have any more questions, just let me know, and post that we can take it. I'm running a small scale business and I have quite good sales on that small scale. But on a larger scale, how do I convince investors? So don't you think the best plan is to make your investor your mentor by offering him advisor shares? Yeah. Okay. This was what the small scale to larger scale is. So when you're doing a small scale business, you're running it successfully and you want to expand this into large scale. So this is exactly the phase where you go into the venture capitalist, because the venture capitalist will be able to evaluate your business and see how good your small scale business is running. And when you duplicate the same thing, how large can it be? For example, large for you might be running your business across India. Now we are running it here in Bangalore, and large for you might be running it across India. But large for a venture capitalist might be running it across the globe. So the definition of large will vary. But if you're a small scale business and running it successfully, you ensure that you give them examples of how you were able to succeed in your small scale business, right? Say, for example, you say, hey, I used a very unique marketing technique. For example, guerrilla marketing. So what is guerrilla marketing? Guerrilla marketing is thinking out of the box. The box, and you think here, right? So you think out of the box and use these techniques of guerrilla marketing where it ensures that you got the visibility that you want. Usually guerrilla marketing are very less used in the more established startups because they are more risky. But you as an early stage startup, if you're able to use guerrilla marketing successfully, then that is an interest point for these investors, especially when you're saying, I was able to generate this in the small scale using guerrilla marketing. I would like to do more with your money in the large scale. So that is how you try to convince the investor while going from small scales to larger scales. Investor, why should you not have your investor as mentor? I think I covered this point. What would be your stance when the investor asks you to reduce the making cost of your product? Yes, this is a very important thing to consider. Again, a lot of investors would like to have reduce your cost of making cost or cost per product as less as possible, but ensure that the cost of your product is always with par with your product quality. So the quality, never compromise on quality because you're reducing the amounts, right? And then you also have to understand when you're in this particular segment, right? So when do you look at reducing the cost of your product? For example, you are in a very highly competitive market, and the investor himself or the mentor themselves know that this product is not going to get launched anytime sooner if it is going to be at this particular point. This is where my thing about parallel lines of customers also comes in, right? When you are trying to build a product at an X value and it is going to be expensive, try to build something smaller which is at a lower cost and try to start selling it and start making revenue. So what this helps you with is you're able to bring in revenue through this smaller product while you have your costs down for this particular product. And the money that came from here, you can use for the development of the higher cost product, where the cost of product is more for that particular thing for the time being. This way you can also convince the investor, and you also feel the satisfaction that, okay, the small bit has worked. I just need to improvise on making the bigger thing upgrade, and then you can start reducing the cost of your product. I hope I answered that particular question. Cool. So with this, I have 4 more minutes. I can take a couple of questions more, or if I don't have any more questions, thank you guys. You've been a lovely audience. Very silent though, like not much of interaction, but still you've been lovely. Over to you, Abhishek.
Yeah, thank you, Suhrit. It was really good. And most importantly, I also learned a lot of things, and thank you for engaging all our students for almost 2 hours. That was really amazing to hear you, and we were just sticking to on a screen to understand. And more innovatively is without using slides, how to attract audiences, something which was very unique thing about you. So with this, thanks a lot again. And our students have one appreciation which they give by emojis to you. So few of them will be doing that usually at end of our classes. So you can see a few of them popping up on your screen. So one important thing outcome of this is, so you just covered the entire steps what we have learned in the previous classes in very simpler and faster way in just around 1.5 hours or so. So thank you for that. And Suhrit, if you don't mind, if our students have any questions, they'll be shooting an email to you. I'll share them an email, your email ID with them so that they can come up. So last question I want to answer is for students like here or some startups. So do you have anything to offer from IKP, like they can come and use resources, and that pretty much you told in the beginning, but if you can highlight that again, please.
Absolutely. So thanks a lot for again inviting me here and letting me, share the experience over here so that it makes use, the students can make use of it. And coming to what does IKP or KTech Innovation Hub powered by IKP has to offer you guys. So there are a lot of things to start with. You guys can just come over here and use our co-working spaces and see how we work out of here. So that is something that you can experience over here. And then we also have our lab facilities, which you can, just come and visit us sometime to see how we are doing these lab facilities and looking at what is the startup that you guys have, right? There are various other offers that I can help you out with as students. There are different offers that we can help you out because we understand the budget of students is not equivalent to budget of other entrepreneurs. So there are multiple offers that we give you for students as well. And also depending on the product or the startup that you're working in, every individual startup has its own initiative. And also we are very pro women entrepreneur for women entrepreneurs. So if you're a women entrepreneurs, all the girls who are listening, if you're an entrepreneur or you have at least 50% of your team consists of girls, there are different packages that we have at our incubation centers where you can make use of these to get the services from us. So what do we offer? To put it in a nutshell, of course, apart from the discount, what are the core things that we offer? We offer incubation support for you in each of your startup journey. There are different things we ensure. We convert your idea into prototype and your prototype into market. So this is what I started with. That is what we help you with. Secondly, we help you with co-working space. And thirdly, we help you with connects in the industry to help you tap doors of different companies. Say, for example, you want clients. I'm not promising that we are getting you clients, but we can help you tap different industries to ensure that they are willing to listen out to you, right? And said that on merit basis, we have different funding opportunities as well, which we can help you out with. So all this depends on how good your startup is or what is it that you're doing. We can go through it and we can help you out in these particular segments. So Abhishek, I think I was able to cover that point for you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thank you for the answer, and thank you for wonderful interaction which have been done. So yeah, our students are really hyperactive. They were little bit now, and I'm sure if you come back again to the class, then they'll become more comfortable with you and start interacting. So with this, thanks a lot for your time and efforts which have been put for us in today's session. And thank you all the students for staying back for the entire 2 hours and listening to us, being very interactive. So with this, we'll close today's session. But before that, I have a couple of announcements for next week. Is that we'll be starting with mock pitches from next week. So get ready. I'll post it on Canvas for all of you to see what is that you have to prepare, how much time you'll be getting. So we'll be simulating your final exams, and then we have other faculties also in the call. We have Dr. Sheshachalam, Dr. Prema. I can see many of the other faculties also, all coordinators. They'll also be giving comments on your session. So I'll open up a sign-up form. We have around 80 teams. So each team will be given an opportunity of 7 minutes starting from next week till the semester ends. That's what we are going to do. Apart from that, in between, I'll try to get some other speakers if I am able to get, and I'll be also discussing about how we will plan for our SCE, because this is the little bit different course. So with that, let me thank you all, and let me stop the recording.